Well, this is terrifying. A plastic surgeon by the name Dr. Kim has got people absolutely horrified after sharing the before and after results of their patients' facelifts. Now, thinking it may have just been one or two cases, I went on Dr. Kim's TikTok page and oh my lord, there's dozens. But the crazier part is that in some of the captions it reads that people saw his videos on TikTok and then flew all the way from places like South Korea and even Spain to get this procedure specifically done by him. And yes, this procedure is as brutal as it looks, because a facelift requires you snipping your face skin, pulling it tight, cutting away the excess, and then stitching it back on your face. As for Dr. Kim, there's really not a lot of information about it. He has no bio, no website, is definitely using a random doctor in his profile picture, and he can only be contacted by WhatsApp. So the question is, do you think they look better before or after?
This is by far the craziest video of 2024. This is a video that has gone viral in the past couple days in which a father or mother's boyfriend is threatening the son to shoot him, and he does. The video opens up with the father or boyfriend pointing the gun at the son. He can be heard saying, "I'm going to blow his effing brains out right now." The mother then comes over and pulls the father away, screaming, "No, no, stop." The father then walks away and the son then says, "Blow my brains out." The father then comes back into the room screaming, "You want me to?" while pointing the gun at him. The son flinches at this point and turns away and says, "Shoot me, I dare you. I guarantee you go to jail for life." The mother then shuts the door and you hear the father saying, "I'm getting ready to blow his brains out and yours. I'm sick of this," to the mother. The son then gets up and opens the door. He then says, "You're going to blow my mom's brains out?" The father then points the gun back at the son and fires. Everything goes silent as you hear the mom gasp. The camera then faces the floor and you hear the mom repeating, "Did he hit you? Did he hit you?" And at this point, you see blood droplets hitting the floor. Once this happened, the mom screams, "Oh my god, you're going to jail." The son then runs out of the house and shuts the door. The video then ends. Luckily, the bullet only grazed the son's ear and he survived, and the father or mother's boyfriend then went into the backyard and ended his own life. Probably because he thought he killed the son with that shot. I don't know what caused this whole situation, but it had to be brewing for some time for the man to snap like this. You can find the video on Twitter, and it has over 25 million views in just a couple of days.
This man dressed up as a woman to lure a girl inside of his car. 53-year-old Andrew Miller, and he previously identified himself as trans, but since then he has referred to himself as a male. February of 2023, Andrew had offered to give a 11-year-old girl a ride home. Instead of taking the little girl to her destination, he took her to his home, then to his bedroom, and refused to let her leave. Andrew then subjected her to a series of SA over the course of the next 27 hours. The 11-year-old girl, who has not been named, claims she did not know who Andrew was. On the second night, she was able to escape while Andrew was asleep. When she was able to get out of his bedroom, she grabbed his phone and called 911. 8 minutes later, about 9 police officers arrived at Andrew's home. The 11-year-old girl explained to police officers that she was unable to get a bus ride home, and that was when she was approached by a woman and she offered her a ride. She had accepted this ride because she was very cold and she saw that it was a lady who offered her a ride, so she wasn't that concerned. When she arrived at Andrew's home, she stated that she repeatedly told him that she wanted to go home, but he refused, and he had actually intended to have her stay there for about a week and that she was his new family. When officers came to arrest Andrew, he was wearing a bra, silicone breasts, women's underwear, and tights. Andrew pleaded guilty to all of his charges, and he will be held in a male prison for 20 years.
Well, apparently there's more to this whole Jordan Willis case, because y'all tagged me in this saying there's a U-Haul out front of his house or something. Let's keep going. Let's check this out. Y'all make sure you hit the like button and follow for more true crime.
Got a little update for you guys. If you have been following the case of the 3 men from Kansas City, Missouri, who were found deceased in this backyard of their friend Jordan Willis's home that he was renting, it appears that Jordan is moving out. Now, if you don't know this case, here's a quick recap. These 3 men went over to the home of Jordan Willis on Sunday night to watch the Chiefs game. They didn't go home after the game. They didn't go to work on Monday or Tuesday. Finally, on Tuesday at around 10 p.m., Clayton's fiance had gone to the house, went around to the back because Jordan wasn't answering the door, even though she had been banging and hollering out his name and knew that he was home. So she went around to the back. She was able to break in through a window, and then she saw a body on the porch covered in snow. She called police, and after they arrived, they found 2 more bodies. Jordan apparently has no clue what happened and told people they must have just froze to death. This is after he had been ignoring everybody's calls and texts for the past 2 days, asking if he had any idea where the guys were. The police said there were no obvious signs of foul play, no arrests have been made, autopsy and toxicology reports are pending. So he can leave, but in my opinion, it kind of looks weird. I know there was talk about a search warrant on the home. I don't know if they did that yet or if they found anything. I was also informed that the police have the cell phones of the 3 guys and they're going through those. What do you guys think about this? I mean, I honestly thought the math wasn't mathing in this case as it was, but now he's moving out.
Correct.
When this girl came home acting strange, her parents recorded her. After the recording was made, she vanished. This is the baffling unsolved disappearance that has plagued investigators for years. 16-year-old Carly Gousset was a fan of scary films. Her loved ones never imagined that their life would turn into one. The teen left her home on the 13th of October 2018. It was the early hours of the morning and the night before she had been out with friends. It's reported that she lied to her parents about where she was going that night and reportedly asked them to pick her up. When they did so, she was running around acting really disorientated and not herself. Her dad, Zach, actually suspected that she had taken some kind of substance, which she had apparently admitted to. For this reason, her stepmom, Melissa, decided to audio record what Carly was like that night so she could show her the next day. They hoped that by showing Carly this, it would encourage her to not do the substances again. However, tragically, they would never actually see her again. It's believed that while her parents were sleeping, Carly left the house and never came back. Eyewitnesses reportedly saw her walking south, approximately 30 yards east of Highway 6 and 100 yards south of Sierra View Road. She then seemingly vanished without a trace. Police were informed and set about trying to find Carly. Melissa made a Facebook Live video 12 hours after the disappearance in the hope that it would attract attention and encourage her to come home. Her family were desperate for help and wanted anyone who knew anything to come forward. Despite no sign of Carly, her family haven't given up hope. Now, interestingly, actually, Carly's dad was arrested on unrelated DV charges. On what would have been Carly's 20th birthday in 2022, an age progression picture was distributed showing what she may now look like. When she vanished, she was 5'7" and weighing 110 pounds.
This is all getting too much, because today Pakistan became the first country to missile strike inside Iran since the Iran-Iraq war ended in 1988. And not only that, but we also had the US carry out their 4th set of strikes on the Houthis after they attacked yet another US ship, and to top it all off, the British government came out with a speech saying that the era of peace is now over and we are moving into a pre-war era. The defense minister said in the next 5 years we could be looking at multiple conflicts involving Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Because of that, we must prepare to deter our enemies, lead our allies, and defend our nation. And these are not just words, because today, for the very first time, the UK is spending more than $50 billion a year on military defense, which is more than ever before.
The White House GIF. I don't know if you ever heard about this.
I never heard about the White House GIF, but I heard about like GIFs, GIFs,
yeah. And I got this from a YouTuber. He's the one that first talked about it, so I want to give him his credits. Lazy Masquerade. It's very, very eerie and disturbing once you know like the backstory to everything. We already know how those scary videos, curse videos were really popular back in the day. They would pop up. We would send them to people. This one wasn't as popular, but it was mostly associated with a video called Why You Never Became a Dancer.
So that's just the whole video?
A song by a band called White House. The song or whatever had nothing to do with the image it was showing, and the identity of the woman remained unknown for like a really long time. So it wasn't until June of last year that they found out who she really was, and a lot of people thought it was fake until a Reddit user, his name was Lane Campbell 77, ended up posting on his Reddit thread that he found a book that was about a Japanese serial killer. His name was Kiyoshi Akubo. He was one of Japan's most notorious serial killers. He had killed 8 victims, one of them being that girl. And her name was Reiko Takemura. One day he had picked her up, the same thing that he did to everybody else, asked her if she wanted to be a model so he could paint. When in this car, Kiyoshi got the impression that Reiko,
she liked him.
Kiyoshi tried to say that, let's go back to like a motel. Reiko was saying, do you really think I'm that type of girl? Later on, they ended up going through this forest road, and he tried to force himself onto her. She obviously slapped him. She tried to run away. He caught up to her. He strangled her to death. The only reason he was caught was because of Reiko's brother. He made it his mission to find Kiyoshi. It was just one night where he...
I believe the state has, in fact, met the burden. So therefore, I am going to find that there is probable cause to charge the individual with the found over for General Sessions Court with a charge.
Yo. Whoa. Where you go? Whoa. Run. Go. What the hell? Inside. Close it.
I did.
Oh, shit.
Oh my gosh. He's going to the basement.
You gotta lock it. You gotta lock it now. Come on. Oh, shit. Here we go.
We're frozen here. Because that doesn't sound like coyotes. They got something. Are they getting closer, Joy? No? A biker just went that way, and the sound got worse.
Mom, can you just pass my drink that's on the table, please? Thanks.
My mom was a very popular stripper in the early 2000s, and as you can imagine, that industry, you meet a lot of powerful, rich, famous people. My mom ended up having an affair with the mayor of the city, who was married at the time. Things got messy, and the mayor of Detroit's wife actually assaulted my mother. Instead of paying my mother hush money, the mayor decided to pay off cops in the city to murder my mother.
This case still hasn't been solved, and it's been years. So this girl's mother was Tamara Green, a well-known exotic dancer back in 2003. It is alleged that she was targeted and then murdered by this man named Kwame Kilpatrick, who was the mayor of Detroit at that time. This is Tamara Green, and like her daughter said, Kwame had an affair with her, and his wife found out, and in order to make the problem go away, he had her murdered. Allegedly. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually happened, because people with power can do a lot of scary things. Tamara's daughter was only 7 years old when she passed away, and she said that she spent so much time fighting for justice, but little to no progress has been made. Whether or not Kwame was responsible for her murder, I really hope that this case gets solved.
The story of Rachel Joy Scott is one of the most heartbreaking, inspiring, and downright creepy cases you will ever hear. Rachel Joy Scott was a 17-year-old senior at Columbine High School in the spring of 1999. She was also a very devout Christian, and everyone knew her for that. Rachel was outside having lunch with her friend when the shooters arrived on campus. Rachel would go on to become the first victim in the most infamous school shooting in American history. Witnesses say that Rachel was shot, and minutes later, after the shooters discovered she wasn't dead, came back and asked her a very simple question. Do you still believe in God? Rachel's answer will go down in history. In the face of death, She replied, "You know I do." The shooters then said, "Well, go be with him," shot her, killing her instantly. It was then discovered that 2 hours before the shooting began, Rachel had drawn this picture. This picture shows a set of eyes crying tears, which then turn to blood on what is known as a columbine flower. There are 13 tears drawn on this picture. 13 people lost their lives in Columbine High School that day.
This is absolutely terrifying. Doja Cat's mother has filed for a temporary restraining order against Doja's brother, and her mom filed it on behalf of herself and Doja Cat. Let's take a look at this. All statements are reported and alleged. This is Doja Cat's mother, Deborah Elizabeth Sawyer. She filed the temporary restraining order against 30-year-old Raymond. This is Doja's brother and the son of Deborah Elizabeth Sawyer, obviously. The things that she lists in her request for the temporary restraining order, first let's start with everything regarding Doja Cat. She alleges that the 30-year-old brother has knocked Doja's teeth out, left cuts and bruises on her, destroyed and stolen her property, degraded her and demeaned her, and left her feeling unsafe and traumatized. That is heartbreaking. Your own brother? So what has he done to the mother? That is the reason she is filing this TRO for herself as well. Well, he's gotten physical with her and threatened her many times over the years, according to what she put in there. The judge granted the temporary restraining order for the mother and approved a hearing where he will listen to what she has to say and consider giving her a permanent restraining order from her son. Now, as far as Doja Cat, the judge denied a temporary restraining order for her and said that Doja Cat would need to file on her own, not her mom filing listing Doja as a party. Let me know your thoughts. Did I just completely miss this and this is something that we knew was happening? If not, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on Doja Cat. As for me, I think she's a marketing genius. I think that she tests the limits and she gets people talking, she gets people looking at her. But if you are in the group of people that think like, oh my God, Doja Cat is weird, she is something else, she is out there, well, maybe those weird traits you see might have something to do with her family life and what she's been allegedly dealing with from her brother. This is horrifying. Let me know your thoughts. I am thinking of Doja and her mother. Good Lord. And if there's some mental health things going on with the brother, I'm thinking of him too. And I hope he gets healing because this can't be a great way to live. Let me know your thoughts.
It is now being reported that scientists in China have been experimenting with a mutant COVID strain that in its first tests have had a 100% mortality rate in humanized mice. Why? According to their preprint results here, the virus known as GXP2V was discovered in pangolins. Never thought they'd be the ops in 2024. They then cloned the virus and infected 8 humanized mice. And humanized meaning they were engineered to express a protein found in people, with the goal being to assess how it might react in humans. And to put it bluntly, it didn't react well, because all 8 mice died within 8 days, with the researchers describing it as surprisingly quick. And because I've watched far too many movies, I can't read the next part without thinking of one thing. The researchers were surprised to find high levels of viral load in the mice's brains, and their eyes turned completely white days before they died. Anyone watch Happiness? Experts have since shared their thoughts, with an infectious disease expert based in University College London saying it's a terrible study, scientifically totally pointless, and a retired professor of medicine at Stanford saying this madness must be stopped before it's too late. So the question is, are there valuable insights to gain from experiments like this, or should they just be left alone?
New homeowners discover a human head and hand inside of a freezer. This happened in Grand Junction, Colorado, and investigators are now investigating the home for a possible homicide that occurred. There was a head and a bunch of limbs inside of a freezer. So the day the homeowners bought the home and got everything sorted out, they put out a message that all the neighbors are welcome to come get the leftover stuff from the tenants for free. Obviously, a lot of neighbors are going to take advantage of this. Maybe they can find something good. But many of them were sorting through the freezer just randomly, trying to help them clean out too, and they found the head and the severed limbs. The victim has yet to be identified, but the sheriff wants to make sure it's private because they want to respect the victim's family and the victim as well. But this is just a shock to the new homeowners. Those tenants need to be investigated immediately. Also, in my recent stories, I don't know what it is, but everyone has just been finding human bodies inside of freezers recently. I don't know if this is a new thing in 2024. We are not even a month in, and I've already covered like 4 or 5 stories of people finding human remains inside of a freezer. Let me know what you guys think about this story in the comment section below, and a reminder, these videos are for informational purposes only.
So this influencer, let's call her Slappy. And Slappy is living a great life. She has millions of followers on her Instagram, her OnlyFans is blowing up now, she's making over $1 million a year from it. So of course she's on Instagram, flexing that big luxury lifestyle, traveling to cool places. But one night, she's in her apartment in Miami, and she gets into an argument with her boyfriend, this guy, Christian. Now, I don't know what was specifically said, but this argument gets heated, like really heated, and it gets physical. And he's allegedly roughing her up, and he's a lot bigger than her. And at some point, allegedly, Slappy goes into the kitchen area and she grabs a knife. And Christian, he's on the other side of the room and he charges toward her. And she throws the knife at him and the knife sticks in his chest. So she panics and she calls 911.
My boyfriend is dying of a stab. Ma'am, what is the address?
Paramedics eventually get there and they take him to the hospital. But unfortunately, Christian doesn't make it. So police interrogate Slappy and they ask her questions, and she says she threw the knife in self-defense because he was being abusive, and they're like, alright, cool, and they let her go. Then police start looking at their records, and they see that the police had been called a lot on this couple recently, mostly for domestic disturbances. In fact, in the 3 months Christian and Slappy lived in that Miami apartment, the police had been called on them 13 times. So they look at this and they decide that this case is just one big domestic dispute that got out of control, and that Slappy had acted in self-defense, and boom, the case is closed. Until Christian's family, and there's a lot of them, so we'll just represent them like this. Christian's family thinks there is no way this story played out the way Slappy says it did. And they hire a lawyer to look into his death. And while they have to start a GoFundMe because they can't afford to pay for Christian's funeral, Slappy buys a $1.4 million house in Texas and moves there. But despite having little resources, Christian's family push police to reopen the case. And eventually, police do. They start reviewing all the times the cops had been called on the couple for fighting. And they start to notice, in some of these fights, Slappy was the one who was physically abusive.
Allegedly.
Like the year before, she had gotten arrested in Vegas for throwing a glass at Christian's head. Police also got a hold of this CCTV footage, which I can't really show you, but they are fighting in an elevator and she is very much attacking him. So eventually, after all this, they start doubting her story. Maybe he wasn't roughing her up that night. Maybe he never charged at her. But then, they get a massive piece of evidence. The medical examiner's report comes back and shows that Christian's injury was inflicted with a downward stabbing motion, not a knife being thrown from a distance across the room. So after 4 months of freedom, police track Slappy down, she's in Hawaii in rehab, and they arrest her, and here's her mugshot. And she's charged with second-degree murder, and she's currently in jail waiting for her trial. And all this happened in Miami, Florida, so shout out to Miami.
This ghost story involves the cold case murder of a 13-year-old girl from Tasmania, who is now said to haunt the road she died on. These are the ghost stories from our own backyard, so sit down, dim the lights as I tell you about the story of Chrissy Venn. On the 20th of February 1921, Chrissy Venn, who was 13 at the time, was running some errands before she went missing from the quiet country town of North Motton in Tasmania. Unfortunately, a few days later, her body was found stuffed headfirst into a tree stump. There was evidence that Chrissy put up a fight before eventually dying from asphyxiation. One of the men that was part of the search party for Chrissy was called George William King. Now, George wasn't part of the search party that had found Chrissy, but he was present when her body was removed from the stump. The locals quickly began to suspect George of murdering Chrissy due to strange injuries on his hands, which he had claimed that he had gotten them from searching for her, but later said that they could have been a result from play fighting with his wife, which I do not believe for 1 second. Rumours began to circulate that Chrissy was actually scared of George during the time she was alive, and numerous people had said that they had seen her hide from George whenever he approached. After Chrissy was found, George had also received an anonymous letter that said, "Take care, I saw you murder Chrissy Venn, and if you don't confess, I am going to tell the police." Alongside the letter was a picture of a man hanging from the gallows. On the 14th of August, George was sent to court for the murder of Chrissy Venn and the trial began. And 6 days later, the jury returned the verdict and George was found not guilty. No one was ever charged for her murder and eventually the case went cold. It is said that her spirit now haunts Allison Road in North Motton. There has been many strange tales of cars stalling on this road, people's cars being scratched, and some people have even claimed to have seen the apparition of a young girl. There is even a tradition in the area to walk out to the location of the stump at midnight and walk around it, in hopes of stirring up any activity.
This self-made millionaire was found in garbage bags at his New York condo, and there are finally updates in his case. Fahim Saleh was the technology CEO, but on July 13th, his cousin horribly found him dismembered on Manhattan's Lower East Side. The killer had fled down a back stairwell just as she walked in, with his body parts still scattered and a chainsaw plugged into the wall. As we know, when police checked surveillance footage from the day before, they found that Fahim was followed into his elevator by a man wearing a black suit, mask, and latex gloves. It's a kind of private elevator that opens up directly into its residence units, and his killer pressed the number for a higher level that he wouldn't have been able to access. He suddenly got off right behind Fahim at his unit on the 7th floor, and you could see that he falls to the ground as the elevator doors close behind them. From here, police were able to confirm that Fahim was tased before suffering multiple stab wounds to his torso, and that whoever followed him into the elevator that day had already been in the lobby for 5 hours, just waiting for him to get home. They were immediately convinced it was a professional hit, so it came as a shock to everyone when they found his 21-year-old personal assistant was using his credit card to buy his girlfriend gifts. When police looked into this further, they found that Tyrese had used that card to get all of the cleaning supplies that were found at the scene. They looked at his phone records too, and that showed that at the time Fahim would have been dismembered, he was Google searching for where to find the joints on a human body. It became clear that the only reason he wasn't still in the apartment when Fahim's cousin showed up was because the cordless saw he was using had just died, and he had to go back to Home Depot to get a charger. Within 3 days, Tyrese Haspel was charged with Fahim's murder, and actually just as quickly why he did it became clear. Fahim took Tyrese in to work for him when he was just 16, and he was trusted with all of his finances and personal matters. But in January of 2020, so 6 months before the murder, Fahim found out that he had stolen $100,000 from his accounts. He confronted Tyrese about it over email, and as you can see, he initially pretended he had no idea what he was talking about. Eventually, Tyrese did admit to stealing money, and just being the person he was, Fahim told him he wouldn't contact police. He came up with an entire payment plan for Tyrese to pay him back, never knowing he would do so with more of his money, or that he had actually stolen like $400,000. And it's unbelievable, but for years Tyrese had set up what looked to be real accounts that Fahim would be paying, and the money was actually going to him. Fahim didn't know this when he died, or that when he trusted him to come over and watch his apartment and his dog, he would have friends over and pretend it was all his own. Today, prosecutors allege that Tyrese killed Fahim because he didn't want him to find out the truth. He pleads not guilty, and it has just been revealed that he plans to argue he was mentally disturbed in the weeks around the attack. If the jury finds this to be true, he reportedly will serve far less time, and his murder charge could be reduced to manslaughter. And I haven't gotten into this, but what Fahim founded is called Godaka, and it's a rideshare company like Lyft or Uber, but for motorcycles.
A Japanese teenager was brutally tortured and gang raped for 44 days before her body was dumped in a drum of wet concrete. On November 25th in 1988, 17-year-old Junko Furuta was biking home from a waitressing shift in Tokyo when 18-year-old Nobuharu Minato kicked her off her bike out of the blue and ran away. A 16-year-old named Hiroshi Miyano came to her aid and offered to walk her home. Little did she know this was a trap. Hiroshi ended up attacking Junko, raping her twice before calling that first guy, Minato, back, and then 2 other friends came who persuaded him to keep her in captivity. Here is when those 44 days of brutality would begin, and a trigger warning here, things are really about to get graphic. They held her in an empty house belonging to Nobuharu's parents, and there the boys would regularly gang rape her, torture her, and beat her. And not just the 4 of them, the teens invited other men back to the house with the express purpose of assaulting her. According to their own statements, they would force Junko to smoke and consume large amounts of alcohol. Then they would do things like douse her in lighter fluid and burn her, sodomize her, and starve her. She became so malnourished that she couldn't walk, and her burns and cuts were so infected that she became confined to the floor. Her poor little face was mangled to the point where you couldn't discern her features anymore. And while she was still alive, her body reportedly started to rot. On the 44th day, Hiroshi was in a foul mood because he lost a board game, and he took it out on Junko. He doused her in lighter fluid and ignited it, and this is not the worst part. Over the next 2 hours, the boys excessively beat her. They made her drink her own urine. She was having convulsions. They repeatedly dropped an iron exercise ball on top of her until she succumbed to her injuries. They then wrapped Junko's mutilated body in blankets, shoved it in a travel bag, and then put that inside of a 55-gallon drum, which they then filled with concrete. They also threw in a videotape of the last episode of her favorite show because she said she had never gotten to watch it and they didn't want her to haunt them. The boys got caught, and after a police interview, cops found Junko's body inside that drum and were able to identify her through her fingerprints. Hiroshi only got 20 years in jail. 2 of the others, a minimum of 5, and the last guy just 8 years in juvie.